I'm somewhat concerned about the continuing debate about whether we should continue keeping the letter of the law of Moses, or not, when Paul said quite clearly in Galatians that faith is not of the law. Law is not of faith. And that if you continue to desire to be circumcised and keep the law, then you're going to have to keep the whole thing, and you've fallen from grace. And there are some who are now saying that, well, we don't have to keep the law if we're non-Jews, but if we're Jews, we do have to. I keep going to Ephesians. For he himself, Jesus, is our peace, who made both groups, that is the Jews and the Gentiles, into one, and broke down the barrier of the dividing wall by abolishing in his flesh the enmity, which is the law of commandments contained in ordinances, so that in himself he might make the two into one man, thus establishing peace, might reconcile them both in one body to God through the cross, by it having put to death the enmity. And he came and preached, Jesus, came and preached peace to you who were far away, and peace to those who were near. In other words, to both Jews and Gentiles. He created one body out of two by eliminating this letter of the law. So to me, that's kind of an open and shut case, though we could go to many more scriptures to support that, but that seems to hit the nail on the head. My point of all this is, maybe if we could kind of start to understand the big picture, that mankind as a whole has a problem, and that problem is our enemy, and our problem is death. It continues to be death as long as we are subject to captivity to sin. We can't get out of that cycle unless we get out of that particular relationship methodology. And Jesus gives us, he says, if you continue in my word, you are my disciples indeed. You'll know the truth, and the truth will set you free. And you'll be free from what? From sin. Paul tells us in Romans chapter 6 and verse 14, I think it is, after he says, stop sinning, for sin will not be master over you, because you're not under the law, you're under grace. Yeah. And how is it that we're under grace? Romans 5:2, we stand in grace by faith. Faith in what? The gospel of the coming kingdom of God. Faith in what Jesus says, and the Apostle Paul tells us, is our destiny. And so we have that, when we get that, we have that release, that energizing of our minds and our hearts to have that kind of relationship with God and with Jesus. I just think that if we understood the global nature of the problem, we would stop, we maybe see the forest for the trees. We would understand why it is Paul is so desperately asking people to not be circumcised, quit putting yourself under the letter because you've fallen from grace. It's a problem then, it's a problem now, it's a problem for all of humanity.